Today, I want to play some of what we heard from President Trump on CBS's Face the Nation. He said he had no idea if North Korea's President Kim Jong-un was sane, but he called him a pretty smart cookie, noting that Kim had assumed power at a young age while dealing with some pretty tough people. So, Senator, when you hear that, what do you make of the president's comments?
Well, the president's comments are very difficult to decipher sometimes because in many cases they're contradictory or in some cases informed. His comments about, for example, the deployment of the THAAD system into South Korea, where he was suggesting that the Koreans should pay for it, was a very confusing statement, not just for the regional powers, particularly the South Koreans, because they have already made significant political payments in terms of boycott from China. They're agreeing to give us the land, build the base, and by the way, that THAAD missile system is going to protect 28,000 Americans. And the sense I have, too, is that it was not coordinated with any of his national security team. He has a very good national security team, but people will look to him rather than the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State when he makes a statement. So it's very confusing, difficult to read, and I don't think it's going to contribute to a long-term policy that's effective.
Let's hear what his National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, had to say on this very issue as you're talking about South Korea and who should pay for the THAAD missile defense system. Listen.
What I told our South Korean counterpart is until any renegotiation, that the deal's in place. We'll adhere to our word. But what the President has asked us to do is to look across all of our alliances and to have appropriate burden sharing, responsibility sharing. We're looking at that with our great ally, South Korea. We're looking at that with NATO. And what you've seen, but because of the President's leadership, more and more nations are contributing more to our collective defense.
So the question of who pays the $1 billion is still up in the air.
The question of what is the relationship on THAAD, on our defense relationship going forward, will be renegotiated as it's going to be with all of our allies. Because what the President has said is he will prioritize American citizens' security and interests. But to do that, we need strong alliances. But also to do that effectively in a way that's sustainable economically, we need everybody to pay their fair share.
So, Senator, I heard you say it may not be good timing to talk about renegotiating the deal with South Korea and who pays for the THAAD missile defense system, but this is a $1 billion system to defend South Korea largely. Shouldn't they help pay for it?
Well, South Korea pays about 40% of the cost of our forces in South Korea. They are one of the most significant allies in terms not just of being prepared to fight themselves and fight alongside us, but also to shoulder many of the expenses. They agreed, and we agreed, that we would provide the THAAD system. They reportedly have donated the land, will build a base, and again, we're protecting American military personnel. 28,000 Americans and their families are there. So this is not some gratuitous gift to a country where we have no issue in the fight. We have a huge issue in the fight. And my guess is he did not coordinate with H.R. McMaster or General Mattis or Secretary Tillerson. He just made this statement.
So you think they're playing cleanup?
Well, they're playing really cleanup. And the sensitive issue, too, the South Koreans are in the midst of an election. There are candidates who are running. We want those candidates to be able to, and the people of South Korea, to assume that our word is good, that we're going to stick with them. We're not going to change course 2 or 3 months from now. And it reflects also on this statement which he made, I think, without proper information about the Carl Vinson battle group, that it was steaming towards South Korea or North Korea, the Korean Peninsula, when in fact it wasn't. That caused a lot of dismay in South Korea. People thought that they were going to be protected. Other people thought, frankly, that this could be provocative. But these comments are disruptive, and they don't suggest to me a coordination with his leaders. And another point that should be made is that the whole Department of State and, to a degree, Department of Defense is understaffed. He hasn't even put together a government, if you will, of key leaders below the secretarial level. And that has to be done immediately, and it hasn't been done. So
there are hundreds of positions left unfilled, we know. Now, the President has also been reaching out to other countries, other region leaders over in the Southeast Asia. But we've learned he's invited now the president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, to visit the U.S. And critics of the president and critics of Duterte in particular say his war on drugs has led to the deaths of thousands of his citizens. But the White House Chief of Staff Ryan Priebus says that they need his cooperation to deal with North Korea. Do you agree?
I think scheduling a meeting this early in the president's term with Duterte is not appropriate. His human rights record is very questionable. His commitment to law, his commitment to treating the people of the Philippines, his people, fairly, is very questionable. And I think this is not the appropriate time to bring him to the White House. And whatever role he plays in our relationships, it's much, much less than the relationship we should be building. And the president, to his credit, is trying to build a relationship with China and also has to reach out to the Russians.
Senator Jack